The opening of Landman Season 2 pulls us straight back into the chaos left behind by Monty Miller's shocking death, but instead of slowing down to let us catch our breath, it doubles down with the introduction of two powerhouse forces, Sam Elliott and Billy Bob Thornton. Sam steps in as Pops, the grizzled father of Tommy Norris, carrying with him the weight of history, family secrets, and a sense of authority that instantly shifts the balance of power in Tommy's world. From the very first moment his voice cuts through, you know this isn't just a side character. This is the ghost of Texas itself walking into the story, and his presence alone changes everything. But before Pops can settle in, Episode 1 drops another bombshell. Billy Bob Thornton. Known for turning every role into something unforgettable, here he shows up tied directly to the Cartel storyline that's been brewing in the shadows, and his arrival is less of a surprise cameo and more of a declaration that Tommy's already fragile empire is about to be tested like never before. What makes this setup so thrilling is the collision course between family and business, loyalty and survival. On one side, you've got Tommy facing the judgment and interference of his father, a man who may very well be the original Landman and the one blueprint Tommy has tried his whole life to escape. On the other side, Thornton's character adds danger from outside, bringing the kind of unpredictable violence and sharp wit that makes every scene with him feel like a ticking time bomb. Together, these two figures surround Tommy in a perfect storm where every choice he makes could either cement his legacy or destroy everything he's built. And here's the kicker. The show doesn't drag out their importance. It sets them both in motion immediately, making sure the very first episode feels like the start of something seismic rather than just a slow return. That's why Episode 1 feels less like a premiere and more like the opening shot of a war. It's a war fought in boardrooms, across oil fields, and within family bonds that were already stretched thin. And now, with Pops stepping out of the shadows and Thornton's character forcing his way in, Tommy is standing in the middle of a battleground where trust is rare, enemies are everywhere, and betrayal feels inevitable. If Section 1 sets the stage with Sam Elliott's thunderous presence as Pops and Billy Bob Thornton's unpredictable edge entering the Cartel world, then Section 2 digs deep into how Episode 1 uses them to rip open Tommy's life in ways he never saw coming. Right from the start, the father-son dynamic between Tommy and Pops is like a raw wound being poked, because Pops is not just another character. He's the embodiment of everything Tommy has been running from. You feel the weight in every line Sam Elliott delivers, like he's not speaking as just Tommy's father, but as the very soul of West Texas, calling out his son for every compromise, every shady deal, every choice that pulled him further from what Pops believes a Landman should be. And here's where it gets thrilling. Tommy, who has survived oil titans, cartel threats, and betrayals, suddenly looks vulnerable because Pops knows his weaknesses better than anyone else ever could. It's family conflict weaponized, and the show plays it beautifully, making you wonder whether Pops is here to protect Tommy or to dismantle him piece by piece. And then, layered on top of this is the storm Billy Bob Thornton brings. His character, tied to the cartel, enters with that unsettling calmness Thornton does so well, the kind that tells you violence is always just a whisper away. He isn't here to make deals, he's here to test Tommy's limits. It's like the show is saying, you thought Tommy's plate was full last season? Think again. Now Tommy is being pulled in opposite directions. A father trying to reclaim control of his son, and a cartel enforcer tightening the leash around his neck. What makes this setup even more suspenseful is the way Episode 1 doesn't give us clear answers. Pops doesn't lay out his whole plan. Thornton's character doesn't explain his full role. Instead, everything is laced with tension, every interaction dripping with half-truths and hidden motives. We, the audience, are left on edge, piecing together clues while realizing that both men are circling Tommy like predators waiting for the perfect moment to strike. And meanwhile, Tommy himself is trying to project strength, telling everyone, including Cammy, who is already clawing for control, that he's still the man running things. But it's obvious his world is shrinking, closing in from every angle. The brilliance of Episode 1 lies in how it balances this chaos. Pops represents the past Tommy can't escape, Thornton represents the danger he can't control, and together they create a trap that feels impossible to break. And you know what makes it even more powerful? The show doesn't treat these men as temporary guests, it frames them as central forces whose shadows will loom over every move Tommy makes this season. By the time Section 2 wraps, you're left with this unsettling feeling that no matter how sharp Tommy plays his game, no matter how many rules he bends, the presence of Pops and Thornton marks a turning point. It feels like the moment the story shifts from a tale of survival to a tale of legacy and destruction, where Tommy is no longer just a fixer in the oil fields, but the man standing between two unstoppable storms. And sooner or later, something has to break. As episode 1 continues to unfold, the pressure around Tommy begins to take on a life of its own, and this is where the show truly begins to flex its storytelling muscle. Pops, with Sam Elliott's unmistakable gravitas, is not simply reintroduced as a father. He's reintroduced as a force of judgment, as though he is both jury and executioner over the choices Tommy has made in his rise through the oil fields of Texas. Every word he says carries history, and every glare he casts is loaded with disappointment, pride, or something far more dangerous. Pops doesn't need to raise his voice. His silence alone carries the weight of decades, and Tommy knows it. What makes this relationship so powerful in the first episode is the sense that Pops is not just here for family ties. He's here to remind Tommy of a legacy, to reassert what it means to carry the Landman name, and to challenge whether his son is truly worthy of it. And that is the kind of battle Tommy cannot easily win, because you cannot outmaneuver the man who helped shape you. While that storm brews on the home front, the arrival of Billy Bob Thornton's character signals a different kind of danger altogether. Thornton enters the storyline in the way only he can. Calm, collected, almost understated, yet every moment with him feels as though a knife is hanging in the air, waiting to drop. His connection to the cartel doesn't just raise the stakes, it transforms the stakes. Suddenly, Tommy's deals are no longer about oil contracts or rival companies. They're about survival, loyalty, and whether he can hold his empire together while menacing figures with far more ruthless methods start circling his world. Thornton has a way of turning every casual conversation into a threat, every smile into a warning, and the show leans into that tension, making sure his presence is felt even when he isn't on screen. The genius of episode 1 lies in how these two new forces, Pops and Thornton, don't simply exist in isolation, but instead press down on Tommy from opposite directions. Pops represents the inescapable past, demanding that Tommy reckon with his bloodline, while Thornton embodies the unpredictable future, threatening to rip apart everything Tommy has built unless he plays by rules he doesn't understand. It's a trap with no clear escape, and watching Tommy navigate it is where the thrill truly lies. At the same time, the ripple effects of these new dynamics bleed into the rest of the cast. Cammy, still adjusting to her role as the widow stepping into Monty's shoes, senses opportunity in Tommy's divided attention. Angela, ever the protector of their family, feels the growing danger but struggles to shield her loved ones from a storm that seems bigger than anything they've faced before. Even Ainsley, preparing for college, becomes a symbolic reminder of the future Tommy could lose if he fails to balance the competing demands on his shoulders. Episode 1 layers all of this seamlessly, never losing sight of the family at the heart of the story while pulling the audience into a suspenseful web of betrayals, threats, and shifting loyalties. And just when it feels like the tension can't get any tighter, the episode makes it clear that neither Pops nor Thornton is going away anytime soon. Both are here to stay. Both are here to shape Tommy's path, and both are ready to turn every move he makes into a battle of survival. That is why, by the end of Section 3, it doesn't feel like we've simply watched a season premiere. It feels like we've stepped into a powder keg, and every character is holding a match. By the time Episode 1 pushes further into its core conflicts, the balance of power in Landman feels more fragile than ever, and Section 4 is where the story really begins to show its teeth. Pops is no longer simply watching from the sidelines. His influence grows stronger with every scene, and Sam Elliott's performance gives him a kind of looming authority that no one else can challenge, not even Tommy. What's fascinating here is the way Pops doesn't need to raise his hand or bark orders to take control. His history, his experience, and his sheer presence make everyone around him adjust. Tommy, who has always relied on his ability to bend the rules without breaking, suddenly realizes that Pops doesn't see gray areas the way he does. To Pops, there's right, there's wrong, and then there's the Landman way, a code of survival and legacy that Tommy may have forgotten. This puts father and son on an inevitable collision course, because Tommy is not a man who bends easily to authority, yet Pops is the one figure in his life who can cut through all of his defenses. And just when you think this dynamic might play out as a slow-burning family conflict, the writers crank up the tension by bringing Billy Bob Thornton's character deeper into the fold. Thornton operates like a storm on the horizon. You never know when the lightning will strike, but you know when it does, it will change everything. His involvement with the cartel becomes clearer, not because he says it outright, but because his every move drags Tommy further into a world where rules don't matter and alliances are temporary. Thornton plays the role with that signature unpredictability. One moment he seems almost charming, the next his words cut like a knife, reminding you that beneath the surface lies a man who thrives in chaos. The beauty of episode 1 lies in how it forces Tommy to juggle both of these pressures at once. Pops pulls him backward into a legacy he cannot deny, while Thornton pushes him forward into a dangerous present he cannot escape. And between those two forces, Tommy's grip on his family, his company, and even his own sense of self begins to slip. Angela feels the cracks as she watches her husband take on more than any one man can handle, and Cammy seizes on every sign of weakness, tightening her grip on Monty's empire with cold precision. The result is a kind of suffocating tension that lingers in every scene. You can sense that something has to give, but the show never lets you know when or how. What makes Section 4 so powerful is that it doesn't simply tell us what's happening. It shows us how each character reacts under the weight of this storm. Pops demands answers, Thornton demands obedience, Cammy demands respect, and Tommy is caught in the crossfire, scrambling to maintain control even as the walls close in around him. And just when you think the episode might slow down to give the audience a moment to breathe, it throws another curveball. Whispers of betrayal inside Tommy's inner circle. Nothing is shown directly, but the seeds are planted, leaving us to wonder who in his camp might be the first to break under pressure. By the time this section comes to a close, one thing is absolutely clear. Landman Season 2 is not playing it safe. Episode 1 is a relentless assault of tension, legacy, and power, and the presence of both Sam Elliott and Billy Bob Thornton ensures that every line, every stare, and every decision feels like it could alter the course of the entire season. You don't just watch it, you feel it, deep in your chest, like the rumble of thunder before the storm finally breaks. The closing stretch of Episode 1 doesn't simply end, it detonates, and Section 5 is where the entire premiere cements itself as one of the boldest openings in Taylor Sheridan's universe. After carefully weaving together the strands of Pops' return and Thornton's ominous arrival, the episode builds toward a finale that feels less like a conclusion and more like a declaration of war. Pops, having spent the episode slowly tightening his grip on Tommy's conscience, finally reveals the depth of his influence. He is not just an old man showing up to pass judgment, he is the original Landman, the living embodiment of the mythos the show has been circling since day one. That revelation alone reframes everything we thought we knew about Tommy's journey. Suddenly, it's not just about oil, power, or survival. It's about legacy written in blood and sweat, a legacy that Tommy can't outrun no matter how hard he tries. And then comes Thornton, whose shadow stretches further with every scene. If Pops is the storm from the past, Thornton is the fire of the present, and together they trap Tommy in a crucible where every choice will scar him. Thornton's last moments in the episode are particularly chilling because they don't come with loud threats or violent displays. Instead, it's the subtlety, the calm reminder that the cartel does not wait, and that Tommy is now entangled in something far larger and more dangerous than even he anticipated. That understated menace is what makes Thornton's presence so terrifying. He doesn't need to shout to make his point. The silence speaks louder. Meanwhile, Cammie's position grows more complex. Having stepped into Monty's empire with ruthless determination, she sees Tommy's conflict with both Pops and Thornton as her opportunity to solidify power. Every glance she throws across the table, every subtle maneuver, makes it clear she's not just surviving, she's plotting. And Angela, still the heart of Tommy's world, begins to sense the cost of these battles, knowing that family might be the very thing that crumbles if the pressure continues. What gives this finale its electricity is how it juggles all of these moving pieces without losing focus. Pop stands tall, asserting his role as the man who shaped the Landman name. Thornton lingers like a storm cloud, daring Tommy to defy him. Cammie maneuvers in the background, and Angela clings to what remains of their unity. And then, just when you think the episode might ease off and allow us a clean break, the final moments twist the knife. Tommy receives that fateful phone call, his voice cracking ever so slightly as he says the word Pops. And suddenly, everything shifts. It's the kind of cliffhanger Sheridan has mastered, simple in execution, devastating in impact. In that single beat, the promise of the season crystallizes. We're no longer just watching a man juggle oil deals and cartel threats. We're watching a son grapple with the shadow of his father, a fixer caught between blood and business, and a man who knows that every decision he makes from here on out could cost him his empire, his family, or his very life. Episode 1 doesn't just kick off Season 2, it redefines it, raising the stakes to heights that feel almost unbearable and setting the stage for a showdown that will stretch across the weeks to come. With Sam Elliott's towering presence, Billy Bob Thornton's chilling unpredictability, and Tommy trapped in the middle, this is not just another season of television, it's the kind of storytelling that makes you count the days until the next episode drops.